So welcome to the chat, everybody. We have a question here from Sarah. It says, given that I have been fired as manager of the universe since I was doing a truly terrible job, am I better off controlling what my family eats and giving them lots of organic veggies and good food, or releasing control of their nutritional intake and letting them eat Pop-Tarts and other icky stuff? Well, shoot. You know, you're going to have to kind of figure this out as you go, but giving your kids good nutrition really is your responsibility, because they're not going to figure it out on their own, especially little kids. I mean, teenage kids, pretty much kiss it goodbye. They're going to eat trash. But with little kids, for dinner, for prepared meals, you serve them nutritional stuff. And if the kids are squalling for an occasional garbagey thing, then what you do is periodically you come up with something that satisfies everybody. So, I don't know, every other day you say, all right, today's Pop-Tarts. You're going to come up with something. But sit down and talk to the kids and say, how would it be if every second day for breakfast, or every third day, or whatever you decide to come up with, you guys get to determine what we eat. You get to have prepared cereals. You get to have, sugar pops. Of course, they don't call them that anymore because nobody likes that awful word. But you get to eat what you want to eat. But the other meals, you're going to serve them healthy, nutritious stuff. And maybe then even for dinner, every fourth night, you serve them some less than wholly balanced organic thing for dessert, you see. You're going to figure it out. But if you make it an absolutely rigid, regimented thing that you shove down their throats, we're going to eat nothing but healthy foods, they're going to really come to resent you. On the other hand, you can't just kind of let them eat what they want. So you figure it out. You're in charge, but listen to them. The more you listen to them and the more you say yes, then on the occasions that you say no, they'll fight you less. You'll discover that's a real little piece of magic in raising kids. So, what happens when, this is the same person, what happens when it's Dad who buys the Pop-Tarts? So that's when you sit down with Dad. Now, you can't do this at the time he buys the Pop-Tarts, and you can't do this at breakfast when he serves them, because it's going to be way too emotionally charged. So on a separate occasion, when nothing else is going on, you say, I'd like to have a discussion about, and this works way better if you have regular discussions about the kids, like once a week. And so you say, I'd like to talk about the kids' nutrition. And that's when you have discussions like, let's talk about what would be good for the kids' health. So, 80% of the time we'll serve balanced meals, and then some of the time we'll just let them eat like pigs. Because, come on, kids like to eat garbage. So sometimes you allow that. And so you talk to him about how, as long as you're unified about it, he can go ahead and buy the Pop-Tarts, but they only come out on certain days. As long as you come at it in such a way that you agree with him that, sure, it's okay for kids to eat Pop-Tarts sometimes, but let's agree on when they get to have them. Instead of coming at them, as many health food people do, and they come at you like, here's what we have to do. When you come at him like that, he's going to fight you. Nobody likes to be told what they have to do. Your kids don't like it, and your husband sure as heck doesn't like it. So relax. Recognize that he has a part in raising the kids too. Don't tell him what to do, and discuss what you're going to do together. He won't fight you. And Sarah, you're going to discover that over and over, it's hugely about attitude. For example, I used to run a Boy Scout team, and I let the boys get away with murder, where it was things that didn't matter. When they wanted to just go running and screaming in the woods and, diving in the creek and making noise and rolling rocks off cliffs, I went, I don't care. And then when it came to where there were occasions where they had to listen, I would just say, okay, look, it's time for us to get together, let's listen. They would. But as soon as you become irritated about anything, they can sense that you don't love them. And the instant somebody senses that you don't love them, they're going to fight you. And that's what happens with kids. You can't have that. You come at them with that attitude. Now the discussion is not about Pop-Tarts. That's something we fail to understand. We don't understand why the kid is having such a violent reaction to us over a stinking slab of pastry and a little slim slice of strawberry jam. Come on. The fight isn't about a Pop-Tart. The fight is about I don't love you. The same with your husband. As soon as you get that sort of attitude about here's what you have to do, you're going to have a world war. And the world war is about I don't love you. It's not about the Pop-Tart. It's really an important thing. So the kids say, Mom, we want to have Pop-Tarts. Instead of screwing up your face and going, Pop-Tarts are bad for you, that's when you're going to get a fight. Instead, when they say we want Pop-Tarts, you say, well, of course you do. Pop-Tarts taste great, even though I think they're terrible. But you say, well, of course you want to have Pop-Tarts. And so let's see. Let's make it so that every Monday and Thursday morning you can have Pop-Tarts and pig slop for breakfast. I mean, make it fun for them. Recognize their need to want to eat something different. Then the other days, we're going to eat healthy. They're going to feel like, dang, Mom listened to us. That's the important thing, not the food. I'm told that people are using the chat rooms increasingly, and people are getting together and just enjoying themselves more, getting together in the chat room, whether there's a real love professional there or not. And that's exciting. I'm tickled about that. So if you guys have any feedback about the chat rooms, what you're getting out of them, or what we can do different with them, I'd love to hear it. Oh, so here's somebody saying she and her husband experienced a version of World War III a couple of weekends ago. The difference from previous times being that within 8 hours, one of us, actually him, had extended the olive branch, and having had an in-depth discussion with my real love coach, she had a discussion, we had turned the whole incident into a real gift. So the more you can tell us about that, the better. But this is the cool thing, is that you don't have to quit making mistakes. You're going to keep making them. And as you learn about real love, in fact, you're going to see even better how many mistakes you make. You're going to actually look stupider because you're going to see your mistakes better, more clearly. But no matter how many mistakes you make, all you have to do is see them. And if you will see your mistakes, you'll discover that you have a natural inclination not to keep making them. We all have a natural desire to do the right thing without being beaten to do the right thing. We've been taught all of our lives by parents, teachers, peers, others, that we don't have a natural tendency to do the right thing. That we have to be beaten, coerced, persuaded, manipulated, pushed. Because, I mean, look, when we didn't do the right thing, people would say, "Oh, do you see what you did?" As though somehow we didn't know. We would, for example, little kid, 4 years old, drop a glass on the floor and break it. And the parent would come over and say, "Oh, do you see?" As though the kid didn't know that dropping a glass on the floor was bad. It's as though we treat people who make mistakes like they are retarded. So we come over and pound them with the mistake. "Oh, you didn't understand that was wrong? Let me show you how wrong it was." People really get the difference between right and wrong. And if we'll just love them and allow them to see their mistakes, they will have a natural tendency not to make them. We really don't trust that. We think we have to push them. And regrettably, the more we push people, the more we control them, the more afraid they become, and they actually make their mistakes more. So we need to learn to lighten up and accept folks, and we'll discover that they do better. So here we have some more details. This is from the wife. "What happened? I lost my temper because I was expecting him to know what I needed without actually telling him. He then sent me a hate email which chronicled just about every bad thing I have ever done since we got married. Don't those just make you feel great? You know? You think you made a mistake. Let me show you the mountain of mistakes you've made." That always resolves everything. What my real love coach had me do was go through the email and for each statement own up to what was true about what my husband said about me and identify the getting and protecting behavior he was using. So obviously he was using a lot of attacking and being a victim and being a liar and some running and so on. But see, when somebody comes at you and they say, "You're a horrible person," we tend to respond to the getting and protecting behavior. We feel empty and afraid, and so we respond back with, "So are you," which is attacking, or we say, "No, I'm not," which is lying, or we withdraw from the conversation, running, or we whimper, how could you say that to me?" acting like a victim. We respond to the getting and protecting behaviors instead of responding to what they say, instead of actually listening. So when somebody says, "You are such a horrible person," the only sensible response is, "Well, I've been a horrible person my whole life long. Give me some details. Tell me exactly what it is you're talking about so I can respond to that." So then they say, and so it turns out that you left your clothes on the bathroom floor. And they say, "You always leave your clothes on the bathroom floor." And of course our tendency is to defend ourselves and say, "Well, I can remember a time I didn't." You know, to pull the videotape out of our pocket, you know, from the surveillance camera showing the one time last year when we didn't leave our clothes on the bathroom floor. That's irrelevant, because what are they really saying? They're saying, "You don't love me." The conversation's always about real love. They're saying, "You don't care about me enough to pick your clothes off the floor. You drop them there and expect me to pick them up. You don't care about me." That's what they're saying. Now, is that true? Do you leave your clothes on the floor, and is that a demonstration of the fact that you don't care about your partner? Yes. Is that true? Yes. Does it matter whether you do it all the time or only 90% of the time? No, because it's still true that overall you're demonstrating that you don't care about your partner. So instead of arguing about the details or the exceptions, you tell the truth about yourself. You say, oh, shoot, I've been so selfish about that. And I'm probably going to still forget and leave my clothes on the bathroom floor from time to time, but at least now I'm going to try to remember it better. And I want you to do me a favor. Would you, each time that I leave my clothes on the bathroom floor, would you remind me, and then you come up with something? Would you remind me by, I don't know, picking them up and putting them in the sink, picking them up and draping them over my head, putting them on the computer, something, so that they know that you're really listening to them. That's what real love is about. Real love isn't about necessarily hugs and kisses and, oh, I love you very much. It's about genuinely caring about the happiness of another person. And when they're telling you that you're not loving them by leaving your clothes on the floor, the most loving thing you can do is simply listen to them and say, you're right, and now what can I do about it? So it's pretty simple stuff. And that's what she's saying she did here. She said, well, you're right. He said, here are all the stupid things you've ever done since we got married. And she's going, yep, yep, I did that, yep, did that, did that. And if she identified one thing that she doesn't remember that she did, leave that alone. Don't come back and go, I didn't do that one. Because all he's going to hear is defensiveness. And the instant I defend myself from you, look what happens. As soon as I do that, we're separated. It doesn't matter whether I'm right. It's the defending that separates us. So it isn't worth doing. If it turns out that I'm right about it, drop it. Just don't even address that particular issue. Move on to the things that you're wrong about. It's magical. I was talking on a radio show earlier today with somebody in Boston, I think, and I was saying, because we're getting closer to Valentine's Day, so we're doing more and more interviews about love, and I was telling them that the 3 words that women and men want to hear most are not "I love you." The 3 words that a woman wants to hear more than any other words are "I was wrong." And when I said that, there were 2 women who were hosting the show. Get this. Both women went, oh. These are magical words. Because when I say, I was wrong, what am I doing? I'm dropping all defenses and paying attention to you. That's so cool. Now, somebody says here, what if you're being falsely accused? So, what if somebody comes up to you and they say, you left the, for example, your wife comes up to you and she says, are you the one that left the cheese out of the refrigerator? And you didn't leave the cheese out of the refrigerator. Now remember, you're not going to defend yourself. So what you say is, you know, I didn't leave the cheese out this time, but I'm the one that left the cheese out the 8 times before this. So why don't I go put it back in the fridge? See that? It's magical what you can do by admitting that you're wrong. You may not have been wrong about this particular time, but I promise you, if you are honest and humble, you can find something you are wrong about every time, because we're that stupid. We make that many mistakes. Come on. We make them every day. This afternoon, this is Sarah again. Chris and I had a 2-on-2 real love coaching session with 2 people there in Phoenix. For anyone who is wondering about the effectiveness of real love coaching, this time was just about the best thing we've done for our marriage. Oh, that is so cool. And what they did was they did real love coaching with a couple. And the man was able to speak to Chris from the male perspective. Hang on, this is bouncing around here. Here we are. While the woman was able to say what she heard from the female perspective and vice versa for me. So it was a powerful way of being seen, accepted, and heard. If you get stuck in a conversation and you feel the anxiety or the tension rise, don't keep talking. If you feel anxious, stressed, disappointed, annoyed, frustrated, any of those things, anything other than happy, shut up. Stop. Go find somebody who can love you. Under ideal circumstances, find a real love coach. Find a real love professional. Find a wise man. Under perfect circumstances, find somebody who can talk to both of you at the same time. We don't need more wounds. We don't need more bleeding. We need more healing. So find somebody who can help you do your conversation differently, not the same old destructive, wounding, cancerous way. Here's a man who said, I just read the chapter in your parenting book about loving your children, saying I love you, hugging them, noticing them when they're in the room, looking them in the eyes. I cannot believe that I was not doing this. The habit of just sitting back and letting things happen was very present. Also, your point about the Civil War and 1 million died versus the correction of 6. Oh, I see. He's talking about how we often correct each other in conversations. Somebody will say, well, 1 million people died in the Civil War, and somebody who just has to be right butts in and says, no, it was 600,000. Who cares? We just have this chronic need to be right. He says, I think that when I correct anybody, that it's the right thing to do. I saw it as teaching, but it really isn't. So every day that I can learn more about real love is a better day. I just have to remember that it takes some more real work. The more you learn about real love, the more you're going to see little things that you do that are not loving. He noticed, for example, that he tends to correct people when it's not necessary. And that's an unloving thing to do, because we correct people in order to get a sense of what? Praise and power for ourselves. And if we're doing it for ourselves, it can't be loving for somebody else. And so here's this man courageously saying, here I was doing this and I'm selfish. So that's pretty cool. And the fact that he sees that he does it will absolutely guarantee that he will, over a period of time, do it less. It's a miracle. It's very cool. He doesn't need to be beaten. He doesn't need to be told, for example, as he says here, I see that I correct people unnecessarily. He doesn't now need to be told by me or anybody else, you stop doing that, which is what we tend to do with people. No, he's got it. He knows. He doesn't need to be beaten or disciplined or chastised. Here's a man named Patrick. He says, I'm 13 years old. That's very impressive. 13-year-old here in the video chat, attending, when he could be playing video games, I'm impressed, attending Pleasanton Middle School. Why would my teacher mark me down a whole grade just for entering an extra blank line on an essay? Obviously, I don't know your teacher, but you got to remember that many people go into positions in life where they're in positions of authority, like teachers, principals, policemen, jailers, parents, frankly, so that they can get a feeling of power over other people. I've now had the opportunity to interview, dozens and dozens of school teachers. And as they have learned more about real love, many of them have said to me, you know, I'm realizing now that I use my students for power. See, here are adults who don't have enough real love in their lives. So they're not happy. They're empty, they're afraid, they're alone. It's sometimes hard when you're 13 years old to look at an adult who looks all, put together and strong, and to realize that very often they're just as empty and afraid as small children. And a teacher is in a position where really they rule a classroom like a tyrant. And so here's a teacher who says, okay, you put a blank line in this thing and I'm going to send you to the basement of hell. I'm going to penalize you a whole grade. I'm going to send you to the principal. Do you see the power in that? I'm going to punish you. That's a pretty strong feeling. And, I can't guarantee that that's what your teacher's doing, but I've seen hundreds of teachers do it. And as teachers learn about real love, I've seen many of them come to me and say, I'm embarrassed because I've done that with my students all the time that I've been teaching. And as they learn about real love, they begin to stop doing that. And instead of using their students for power and controlling them like objects or slaves, they begin to learn to love them and just love them and teach them, which is much more rewarding. So look at your teacher and realize that your teacher's flawed just like anybody else. Also consider the fact that you need to also always look at yourself. I mean, maybe, I don't know because I don't have the whole story here, maybe the teacher told you that if you enter a blank line, you would be penalized a whole grade, in which case that would be your fault. I don't know. I'm just asking. If the teacher didn't tell you that ahead of time, then the teacher's just getting a power trip off you. And you just need to recognize that people do that. And we all tend to do that. I mean, which of us hasn't at some point in our lives gotten a sense of power over controlling somebody weaker than us? So it's regrettable, but there you are. And you could resent your teacher and hate him or her, or just recognize that that's what people do when they're empty and afraid. If you have more questions about that, keep asking. Here's somebody who said that they sent an email earlier today about being a doormat, and it was a good question, so let me find that. He said that he was at a parade where others and I staked out a front row area to sit in at 7:30 in the morning with all their kids, 3 hours before the start of the parade. That's dedicated. At around noon, or midpoint in the parade, two people who appeared to be just passing by taking pictures stopped and sat down right in front of them. They weren't part of the parade, they weren't part of the press, they weren't taking pictures, they just sat right down and blocked the view. Now, in the past, he said, I would have tapped the man on the shoulder and told him that if he didn't move, I'd be happy to put his camera where the sun doesn't shine, but I didn't do anything. I sat there hoping that he would realize what he was doing and move. A fat chance of that. Eventually, I moved over so I could see some of the parade. The rest of the evening and into the next day, I was disappointed in not saying anything to those inconsiderate people. I think for me, it's possible that doing nothing has produced more anger than the actual event. I do not think ignoring, or maybe you could call it running, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, he's saying, so what do I do? In the past, his tendency has been, to get angry, and now his tendency is to kind of run from the situation. The more you learn about real love, you do not become a doormat. Now you can lovingly tell people, no, you can't do that. I don't hesitate to tell people when they say, well, can I do? No, no, you can't do that. Every once in a while, somebody will infringe on my property here. For example, some bonehead will think this is a public park. Back in my backyard, there's a creek running through it, and come back there and fish in the creek or the lake. And, I have to go back and say, it's not a public park. And you can tell them no, and they have to leave without being hateful. I went back there one day, and I told the man that he would have to leave, and he said, do you know who I am? And I said, no, I don't. And he said, well, I'm a policeman with the Rome Police Department. I said, then it would seem like that as a policeman, you would know a whole lot about property rights and would know better than to come back and fish in my yard. So, and he said he still wasn't leaving. And I said, not a problem. I'll just call 911 and speak to your sergeant. Your name is... So you don't need to be angry. You don't need to threaten people. You just tell people, this is what I will do next. So, you know, I was doing something just a few days ago, and there was a long line of people, and this lady just walked right past 30 people in line and butted right in front of me. And I reached up and tapped her, and I said, the line is back there. And she looked at me like, and who are you? And I said, no, the line is back there, and you need to go back there. And she said something really hateful to me, but she moved. So if somebody sat in front of me after I had spent all that time, you know, waiting, then I would tap them on the shoulder and say, we've been waiting here since 7:30 to get this unobstructed view. So if you would like to have an unobstructed view, I would recommend that next year you come here at 7:30. But right now, you are in our way. And that's all I'd say. Now, then what if he absolutely refuses to move? Well, I mean, what are you going to do? Punch him in the head? All you can do is say, would you please move? You can't keep people from being buttheads. And that's just going to happen. People are going to do unfair, inconsiderate, swinish things to you all your life. Too bad. But you do get to say something about it. Sometimes you even get to enforce consequences. You get to call the police or whatever. In the case of a parade, that'd be like a little much, you know? But at least you can say something. And then you won't have to feel bad that you were a doormat. So definitely you get to say something. Sarah said the biggest thing that I got from responding to Chris's email, I showed him the comments that I'd made to each of his statements, was admitting that I had been wrong in many instances. Until our coaching session this afternoon, I was hanging on to being right for just one thing that he'd said. Our coaches persuaded me, lovingly, that my need to be right about even this one thing was something that I could give up and they would still love me. I tell you, we've been taught all of our lives that being right is just incredibly important. And it doesn't matter. I can still remember the feeling that I had the first time that I felt like I was right about something, and I went, who cares? And I just described the ways that I was wrong and realized I didn't die. It was wonderful. The act of defending ourselves is so selfish and so stupid, so meaningless. The reward you get for defending yourself and for being right is what? When does anybody ever come from stage right and hand you a trophy for being right? When does anybody ever give you a rewarding relationship for being right? You just don't get spit for being right. So why bother? It's a great lesson you learned. Wonderful. Something came up this afternoon. My home is a place of safety, but sometimes it seems almost like a prison. Not entirely sure what my question is here, but can you speak to this issue of safety becoming a jail? Nope, you're going to have to help me more with the question. Don't quite understand it. So just help me more. I'm sure I'm just dense and not getting. I need more help. Here's somebody saying, do you think that there is or could be a gap between the angry reactions and feeling loving enough to say something without anger, referring to the parade situation? A gap between the angry reactions Oh, sure. You mean like, in other words, could it take time to move from reacting angrily to being loving enough to say something without anger? Duh. I mean, it took me years to do that. So is there a gap? Yeah, a big one. So, frankly, in this man's situation, I was saying, now here's something that you could say. But if he was feeling angry, there's no way that she could have said, if he was feeling angry, there's no way he could have said what I just said. You can't fake it with just the words. So I was saying that's what I would say to the guy now, not feeling angry. But if you're feeling mad, you can't fake the words. So if you're feeling angry, the best thing to do is what he did, which is just shut up. Even though you may feel like, oh, I want to say something, I want to kill him, I feel like a doormat, better to shut up and feel like a doormat than explode and be angry and hurt people and be a terrible example for your children, and better to shut up every time. So, yeah, very often we can't do the best thing because we're not loving enough. So sometimes we have to do the second best thing, which is shut up and run. Mike was suggesting that this safety thing and prison thing, and Sarah, you tell me if Mike's nailed it. I think he might have. That safety can become a form of imitation love. In other words, many people tend to do what's safe so that in other words, they never take risks, they never say an offensive thing, they never do anything that might upset people, so they are constantly avoiding other people's displeasure, they're constantly avoiding risk, they're constantly avoiding irritation, anger. You listen to people and often when you'll say, why don't you do this? Ooh, but what will people say? What will people think? What will people, and so they never do a thing that might cause displeasure or disappointment or irritation. That's safety. But unfortunately, that creates a real prison where you don't get to do anything. You feel trapped all the time. You don't ever get to make a decision that you would normally like to make because you're constantly going, can't go there. I'd like to go, I can't go there. Say, I'd like to do that, but ooh, they wouldn't like it, so I can't go there. And if you put up enough of those barricades, I can't, before long, what have you got? You're in a prison cell. So I don't know if that's what you're saying, Sarah, but that's a very common situation. And that's why the only cure for that is that you have to get enough real love in your life from enough people that when you go to say, well, I can't do that because somebody might, you don't care. If I have enough real love from enough people in my life, I'm not paralyzed by what a single person might think of me in a situation. So now when I go to make a decision, I don't say, ooh, they might not like me. Because I already have enough people who love me, I can remove that barrier. I can move forward and do what I want to do, what I think is the right thing to do. And if there's a chance that somebody might disapprove of me, well, gee, too bad. Because I already have enough people that care about me that I won't be devastated if somebody doesn't like me. And I'm therefore freed from that prison, which is created by safety. That was a nice call on Mike's part. So, Vicki, did I answer your question about what does a person do in the meantime? In other words, when you're making progress from not feeling loved to loved, what do you do like in the parade situation where you're feeling angry when somebody's sitting in front of you? In the short term, you just shut up. There's really nothing else to do. Remember the 5 steps of anger. Do you remember what they are? I have to think about them now. Be quiet, be wrong, feel loved. You remember that there are people in your life that love you. Get loved, be loving. So here's this person in front of you. The first thing you do is shut up. You remember that you're wrong to be angry because you're unloving, even though, yes, that person's wrong too. You remember that there are people that love you. Kind of hard in the middle of a parade to get loved, but I don't know, maybe you could get on your cell phone and call Vicky. Or be loving. Now, how can you be loving in the middle of a parade? Well, actually pretty easy. You don't necessarily have to be loving toward the people who are sitting in front of you, but if you were to occupy yourself with doing something loving with your children, it doesn't matter where you exert your loving. As you exert yourself toward doing something loving toward your children, the love you feel in your soul will magnify. You're going to forget the people sitting in front of you. You're going to remember that the purpose of the parade was what? What was the purpose of the parade? If we remembered this every minute of the day, everything would change. The purpose of the parade was not to see the parade. It was not to get a clear view of the parade. The real purpose of the parade was to provide or to have a loving experience with your children. Oh my gosh, what if you remembered that? That changes everything. You can have that loving experience with your children in a cardboard box. So the people who are in front of you then suddenly become kind of irrelevant, don't they? See the point? That's really important. And when we remember that, it changes the way we interact with people all the time. When my kids were little, we were in Charleston, South Carolina, and I was building a playhouse for them in their bedroom. And it was very cool. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen for a playhouse for kids. Coolest thing I'd ever, of course I don't get out much. But I mean, here was this cool playhouse in it. And I mean, it had places to play in it, and it had a little trap door and a little ladder they could go from the, you know, it was 2 stories, and they could go from the lower play area to the upper play area. And there was a little drawbridge that they could drop over from their playhouse over to their bunk beds, and they could crawl across the drawbridge. I thought that was just the coolest thing. And it was all painted, and I was just so tickled because I designed the thing and we were building it all together. And here we were building this playhouse, and I can't remember what it was that I was doing, but I think, screwing screws into a board or something. And one of the kids was over there. It was Mike or Jonathan. And they were messing with the screws or the power drill or something and doing something I didn't want them to do. And so I was raising my voice and snapping at this kid. And this kid, whoever it was, just shrunk within himself. It just looked like I'd just beaten him, which emotionally I just had. And it was one of those rare moments when, instead of just continuing to be a monster, I stepped back from what I was doing and looked at what I was doing and saw that I was emotionally beating up this kid. And then I asked myself, so here you are, the entire purpose of you building this thing, this playhouse, is what? As a demonstration of your love for your kids, so that they could be happy and play. And here you are building this opportunity for them to feel loved and happy, and you're screaming at the kid while you're doing it. Now, who's the insane person in this picture? Who's the person who's nuts? The kid who's playing with the screws over there and making a mess, or the adult monster who's yelling at the kid? That was a very sobering picture. We got to remember why we're doing everything. If real love isn't part of what we're doing, we might consider that we might be wasting our time, you know? So same with the parade. You stop and you focus on your kids instead of the 2 morons who are ahead of you and admittedly being inconsiderate, and suddenly, who cares whether they're in front of you? When I can remember that, it's hard for anybody to disturb the peace in my life. Here Jill is saying, I can relate to what you just said about doing the second best thing. I tried to call my husband yesterday and his cell phone was off. I felt immediately being rejected. I was drowning myself. I tried to call someone, but they were unavailable. So I decided just to read the Real Love Workbook. I made myself shut up then by doing something else instead of hating him at the moment. And I'm glad that I did. See, that's, Jill, that's just brilliant. You know, we'll often say, you know, I got into a situation and there was nothing I could do. Oh, you know, that's almost never the case. There's always something else we could have done that was smarter. We could have made a phone call to a coach. We could have made a phone call to a friend. We could have pulled out a Real Love book that we carry with us. We could have pulled out one of the Real Love pearls, you know, the little cards, and read one of those. We could have opened up our laptop and gone to the reallove.com website and pulled up one of the video coaching sessions. Gosh, we could just sit where we are, anywhere, and either meditate or pray, whichever activity you do, and think about the love that we have in our lives. There are so many things we can do instead of opening our mouths and saying something angry and inflicting yet more wounds on the people around us. And of course, which always happens as we say something angry, inflicting more wounds on ourselves. So there's always more that we can do. And there's always kind of the perfect thing we can do, the perfectly loving thing. But, you know, most of the time we're not capable of doing that. And that's okay. You know, sometimes people will say, well, what would Jesus do? What would Buddha do? What would Gandhi do? Well, that's cute, but often we're just not capable of that. So if we can do the second or third or fourth best thing, that's okay, because we're making progress. And as long as we can identify what the next best thing is, and maybe even the perfect thing, we'll be making progress toward it. That's all that we need to do. We don't need to be perfect today or tomorrow. Relax. And as Vicki reminds us here, it sounds simple, and it is. Real love is phenomenally simple. This is not complicated stuff. This is not rocket science. But it's not always easy. Now, why is it not always easy? It's not always easy because we tend to resist. We tend to fight. We tend to try to be right. And we have the inertia pushing us from behind of decades of doing it wrong, being taught wrong. We don't need to feel guilty. If I've been taught to do something wrong over and over and over again, it's going to take me a little while to unlearn that. It really is. My son Joseph is a professional dancer, and he often talks about what's called muscle memory. They will do a particular dance step or sequence of steps over and over and over again so that it becomes ingrained as a memory in their muscles, so that under virtually any circumstances they can repeat those steps. On the other hand, if they learn the steps wrong, it's tough to unlearn them. We really get a memory for doing a thing over and over again. And if we learned to be afraid, defensive, angry, and so on, and we've been doing it for decades, when we're in a panic, when we become frightened, when we become confused, we tend not to do what's right or most effective. We tend to do what we've learned and what we've done the most. So don't beat yourself up about it. Do the best you can. Identify the mistake you made and go, okay, so the next time I'll probably do a little better. Big deal. So once again, you guys have had just astonishing, insightful, and profound questions, and I'm grateful for them. They've been really gratifying to me, and I'm sure to the rest of you. So I look forward to seeing you back in a week on Tuesday at 9. Bring your questions with you. As you have interesting interactions with people during the week, I recommend that you carry a piece of paper, a 3x5 card with you, and write your questions down with you during the week, because remembering details later is tough. One of the most common problems I run into in counseling with people is I'll say, okay, give me an example of a conflict that you had with whoever during the week. And people say, but I can't remember. It's really difficult to deal with generalities. I have a problem with, and you name a general problem. Whereas when you name a specific problem, ooh, you can really learn a lot from applying principles to the specific. So write them down if you get a chance. And next Tuesday, we'll come back and get a chance to learn, as we always do, that it's always about real love. And we love you a lot. See you next week. Bye-bye.